Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
When the neighbor Aunt Clara asked if Lisa could spend the night alone tonight, she had to be honest and admit that she couldn't. It was scary to look at her grandmother's empty bed, but it was impossible not to. Silence rang around, silence to the point of ringing in my ears. Who invented this omen to stop the clock in the house when a person dies in it? My grandmother loved her antique clocks, their slightly rustling sound. When Grandma brought little Lisa here, the clock had been here for a long time. Lisa cried the first night. Grandma sat on her bed and quietly comforted her. You see, you and I are going to make a good life together, like girlfriends. I've chosen the coziest corner for your bed. Doesn't the clock bother you? You can hear it rustling in your ear. Lisa quietly pushed the pendulum and cried silently. It couldn't be that Grandma was gone. When her 6-year-old had been told that Mommy and Daddy were dead, she hadn't believed it for a very long time. They must be somewhere now, which means they'll be here someday. That's why she flatly refused to leave their common home. She doesn't even remember why she agreed. Probably her grandmother had managed to persuade her in some miraculous way. Grandmother was so skillful. At first, Lisa was still terribly afraid that she would be taken away by some of the strangers who appeared in the house after Mom and Dad disappeared. There wasn't a single evil person among them. It was just that they were all complete strangers to her. She was afraid to even cry in front of them, let alone answer their questions. When they asked her something, she did not just keep silent, but turned away just in case. That way they would get away from her faster, stop noticing her. One day some aunt pestered her. She told her that she had to go to kindergarten tomorrow, and Lisa turned away and looked at the front door, pretending not to hear anything. Instead of Lisa, the aunt answered some incomprehensible nonsense, their neighbor Camille, with a purple curly head. She had long ago been promised to be taken far away to another town to visit her grandmother. And now Grandma had come on her own and turned out to be just that. Daddy never lied. Having met her grandmother, Lisa immediately stopped being afraid of all the terrible fears. It turned out that she and Grandma had no one but each other. Lisa was glad when she learned that it would be just the two of them. How nice that it's just you and me, Grandma, with no strangers. Grandpa would have loved you very much too. You can be sure of that. Granny smiled. She wasn't very happy that it was just the two of them. There were lots of pictures of Grandpa in the house, but all in albums, and only one on the wall. It showed both a young and dark-haired uncle, cheerful and strong, sitting in a boat, and on his lap he held a little boy, a little older than Lisa, and the boy was very serious, frowning and gripping the oars tightly. Lisa recognized right away that this boy was her daddy. They had pictures of him as a child at home, too. Grandma said that here they were on a fishing trip. It had been some very fishy summer, and they had had a terrific vacation. And in the early fall, 2 days after returning from vacation, Grandpa was killed in the line of duty. Little Lisa was afraid to ask what that execution was, and Grandma wouldn't explain. Further family history, sad but also beautiful in some ways, Grandma revealed to Lisa later. James, her dad, grew up and went to Washington, D.C. to study. To his mom's delight and relief, he had absolutely no desire to follow in his father's footsteps, no attraction to any dangerous service, and simply enrolled as a design engineer. Thoughtful and focused James, very suitable for this specialty. Everyone around him thought so too. No one expected from the guy, no adventures. But he did. He fell in love with a girl from a wealthy family. And he didn't just fall in love for a while, he really fell in love. He was like that about everything. And the girl, Emily, Lisa's mom, turned out to be the same way. Both mother and stepfather were sure that sooner or later she would marry the son of a family friend, with whom the stepfather had a business partnership. The guy was really very shallow, had been educated in England, had returned, and was making a significant contribution to his father's business. He was in his late 30s. Financial prosperity was in sight. Why not get married? Mom and stepfather, at first quietly, and then more and more frankly and firmly, began to push the student to a profitable, prosperous marriage. At first she shrugged it off, probably too carefully and for a long time, so that the family had time to realize that her refusal is not a caprice, spoiled princess. But it was also time to speak seriously. Emily slightly audibly inhaled, exhaled noisily, and announced, "The thing is, I have another fiancé." "Who is he?" Mom asked languidly, secretly hoping that the beautiful daughter went into her and knows how to find the best of the possible. And Mom was disappointed, extremely disappointed. The groom turned out to be a young engineer, yesterday's graduate, who found a job in an old construction firm. Much is decided by the family, but also the groom's mother, the widow of some provincial cop. And this, for this almost country bumpkin of a boy, his mom has raised Emily? Her Emily, with clear skin, a chiseled profile, and the softest green, almond-shaped eyes. Love? But I had love too. I loved marrying your daddy, who got involved in an obscure project and left you and me penniless. If it wasn't for Michael, you would have grown up in a dormitory. That's how my mom met my daughters. Michael's mom's husband and Emily's benefactor was brief. "You will marry Sebastian," long ago agreed. Mom was afraid of his weighty statements. Emily, for some reason, wasn't. She married her James, and her parents kept their promise, cut her out of the family. Especially since they had another girl growing up, little Kelly. Their shared daughter with Michael was surely more successful and promising than this Emily, who had inherited stupidity from her father. Grandma Lisa said, "I am passing on to you the way your mother told me, adding nothing of myself. If you want to, you can always look up your mother's side of the family. I once thought it was wrong that they weren't told of your birth, but when your parents died, my matchmakers were notified. Just know that just in case, and decide for yourself." There was nothing to decide. No one had come for Lisa except Grandma Wendy, so she had no family anymore. Now Grandma Wendy was gone, so no one at all alone in the whole wide world, unless it's Kevin. "Lisa, you knew Grandma was sick." "Yes, I realize, of course, old. I have a mother a little younger than your grandmother, as you know. But a sick heart is a sick heart. You can't help it. You have to move on, not mourn endlessly." That was Lisa's consolation, Kevin. He convinced me to go to Washington. What's there to catch? He's a novice car mechanic, but he's already a good one with great reviews. If Lisa rents out her and Grandma's apartment, and he adds his savings, and then gets a job quickly, they'll rent a small apartment in Washington, in a residential neighborhood, and then they'll have something to live on. Remember I told you about my ideas before, but you were so afraid to leave your grandmother. You were glued to her, and now you have nothing to hold you here. Now Lisa really had nothing to hold on to. She wouldn't dare go alone to a strange, unfamiliar city. But Washington, D.C., her mom's hometown. Plus she'd have Kevin around to keep her company. Aunt Clara shook her head. "Oh, I don't know, of course. I'll help her rent the apartment. I'll control the tenants, but it's such a penny, barely enough for a room in Washington. There's a different price of living there, everything. You're just out of college. You got zero experience. You're not gonna find a job. What are you gonna live on? At least you're at home here." and I'll always pour you a bowl of soup if you need it." "Oh, Aunt Clara." Lisa waved her off. "It's just the two of us. Kevin has thought of everything, made some savings, and he'll find a job with his qualifications right away. We'll certainly live no worse than here. He realizes that he'll have to rely on him for the first time." Aunt Clara waved her hand back and forth, got up from her chair, walked around the room. All this in silence, and finally she said, "Your business, Lisa. Grandmother's apartment is only yours, and in this sense there is nothing to be afraid of. But I don't like these fashionable civil marriages without marriage license. I'm old-fashioned. It is for guys good and convenient. All these let's live see, something will not suit, we'll split up and share nothing, and that so at least every year with a new life? What's good for us girls? Not a wife, not a fiancé, just a temporary trial. And what hope is there for such a husband? Well, if he had settled in the city himself, created a base, and then dragged you along with him. But no, he decided to stick to his grandmother's apartment to make his life easier. Maybe you'd be fine here. It's your own place anyway, and we're all our own people. And Grandma Wendy would probably say the same thing. You know as well as I do." The tactless mention of grandmother might have been taken offense at, but Lisa took no offense. Grandma would have understood. Convincingly she replied, "Of course Grandma Wendy would understand. She understood a lot more about relationships than the other grown-up aunts. Lisa knew that for some reason. The other thing was that if Grandma had been alive, Lisa wouldn't have dared to move so far away from her. But now, it didn't matter anymore. It was as if the stars had taken it upon themselves to help Lisa with Kevin. Surprisingly enough, they found a decent long-term tenant, a young couple with a baby boy. Lisa prepared in advance, disassembled, and neatly stacked the grandmother's wrinkled things, gave them to Aunt Clara for safekeeping. She took only her watch with her, sent it to her suitcase in a cozy box, lovingly nestled between her warm sweaters. "They're so bulky, Lisa. Why carry them around with you?" Kevin wondered. "They took up half my suitcase. I'm going to hang them in our rented apartment so I can have something of my own." "Well, if that's the way you want it, let them be." Kevin graciously agreed. In Washington, too, everything was going according to the planned scenario. They quickly found a studio apartment for the right price and a job for Kevin. True, the apartment was very cramped and nowhere further from the subway, and the job was on the opposite end of the city. But that didn't matter much if you didn't pick on the little things. Lisa put things on the shelves in the closet, hung a clock on her grandmother's wall, walked around the stores near the house, boiled some borscht, and sat down at her laptop. She should have been looking for a job, too. Of course, she has no experience, but in college she took first places in hairdressing creative competitions, and she has diplomas, and she agrees to the most modest salary, only if there was an opportunity to gain experience. Coming from work, Kevin several days in a row forced the same picture. A clean apartment, lunch on the stove, a focused Lisa, frowning her forehead, sending out her resume to salons. "Lisa, don't dwell on it. From the outside, you'd think that I'm not able to provide for you, reproach you, and drive you to work. And everything is 200 times wrong. You don't have to work at all, at least as long as we're renting at this price. And if they raise the price, you can raise the price for your tenants." "No, I can't do that." Lisa sighed honestly. She told him. It was hard enough for her to rent out her and her grandmother's apartment. She could only console herself with the fact that Miranda and Charles were very nice guys, and their son David, a wonderful, cheeky big guy who liked to smile and sing songs in his crib. She couldn't let anyone worse live in their apartment, and she wouldn't be able to raise the price of these people. "Fool," You're still a little girl, my favorite fool." Kevin grinned patronizingly, hugging her. "All right, I'll take care of the problems myself. But I need you not to be busy and tired, but to wait for me at home with lunch. I'm really so tired in this car service that if you will also come crawling, the same from some beauty salon, then on only bought dumplings I will not live long. I'm not quite used to it yet, and to get anything done, I need to step up my game. Stay at home, Lisa. It'll be easier and better that way. You've got it all set up like it's our own apartment, and you can walk around town half the day so you don't get bored while I'm working. Other girls dream of having a boyfriend to support them, and you want to work, capricious." Lisa was embarrassed. It's true, she's like a little girl. She'll earn 3 cents and deprive her Kevin of a fresh lunch and dinner every day. If they don't throw their money around, they can get by. It's not like she's going to the theaters and concerts. That's fine. They'll get along just fine without her earnings. Summer came, and Kevin's conviction that she had no need to work came in handy. Although the summer was cool and windy, with frequent rain, it was still a beautiful summer. The city didn't seem so uncomfortable and gray to Lisa when the shady greenery in the parks grew. One day Lisa went to the museum, and without noticing it she spent 3 o'clock there. She told Kevin at home at dinner and suggested, "Why don't we go together again this weekend? I didn't have time to see and memorize everything there, and then we'll go somewhere else. Why did we come here if we can't see anything?" "Lisa, I came here to earn, not to spend." Kevin explained condescendingly, "I can see it all later if I want to." Kevin worked hard and saved money for some important plans, which she promised to tell about later. Kathy, the neighbor on the floor, with whom Lisa managed to make a friendly relationship. She thought she was unlucky with Kevin, Lisa. He's a hard worker, he's determined beyond his years, he'll bring everything into the house, you can see that. You know how infantile guys are these days. Take my Ethan. We already have a 2-year-old son. What matters to my husband is his friends, his company. Friends are the center of the world. They should always rush to help at the first call, and it doesn't matter that his wife had other plans. She is not bored with the child, the son always cheerful. They're all selfish, most of them, so you've got a good one. Although you're pretty, Lisa, you could have found a better one, someone not stingy, who would take you everywhere, but not a fat. So yeah, if you're not picky, you're pretty good. Lisa, after Kathy's words about options, it was even kind of embarrassing to tell her that she lacked something. She had a very different idea of their life in D.C. It seemed to her that they had been together for 100 years, and Kevin had stopped loving her truly like he used to. He comes home from work tired, often irritable over nothing, collapses on the couch waiting for food, and looks at Lisa as something that has always been there, is there, and will always be there, like a central heating radiator, for example. At night, though, he changes, especially before the weekend. He remembers that there are affectionate words, promises that he will definitely think of something interesting for the vacation. Probably, it's really about fatigue, about worries. We'll be able to achieve something in a foreign city, in a megalopolis? To get accustomed here? Of course, it's hard to work alone for 2 people. Everything is getting more expensive. Soon the landlord will hint at an increase in rent. We'll have to find a job for ourselves. Kevin will grumble at first, but then he'll realize it's better. And she'll have no time to be bored and think of silly things. And it will be interesting because the hairdresser is a man of art, no matter how much her favorite one giggles about it. Lisa thought about it. She consulted with Kathy and decided to try a different job search tactic. Nothing comes of sending out resumes listing kids' college pageant prizes when you have no experience at all. There are probably 1,000 of these same girls, 1,000 of resumes being sent out at the same time. Go on your own in the neighborhood salons. Varies advice. An old method, but in your profession can work. A hairdresser has to make you feel at ease. When I first saw you, I thought we were lucky. The neighbor rented an apartment to a very nice girl. So walk around, smile, socialize. Maybe that'll help. In an expensive luxury salon, so from the street, of course, will not take. But in the barber shop, as in our neighborhood, very even. And Lisa, having hardly waited for Kevin to leave for work, went to look for happiness. There were plenty of salons and establishments under the modest sign of a hairdresser's shop, even in walking distance. 4 salons did not show the slightest interest in her. But in a tiny, modest semi-basement under the glamorous name of Orchid, bored full brunette, after a short survey Lisa revived. Oh, I need a replacement. My shifter is not a bad girl, but she has a stormy personal life and responsibility is not her thing at all. A word from another planet. She has to be replaced all the time. The owner doesn't care which one of us works, as long as it's not at a loss, but I'm really sick of this unpredictability, and it's useless to talk. I can tell you're different. If I put the owner on the spot, it's either me or Jenna, he'll ask her, because he knows exactly who's worth what. He doesn't pay much, so he doesn't have the nerve to expect a super master. It's just convenient for me that I live on the floor above our salon. I would have looked for something better a long time ago, but it's convenient to run from here, to take my daughter home from school. Contingent we also local, for years the same grandmothers and aunts, the requirements without much fantasy. I'm sure you've been practicing on the same neighbors back home. Yeah, well, nothing unexpected. Leave Lisa's cell phone number. I'll be sure to call you when I hop up to introduce myself to our Benjamin. My name is Nancy. I promised to get him ready. Lisa liked Nancy and her confidence was reassuring, but for some reason the air in the semi-basement seemed somehow stuffy, sickly sweet. Then dizziness and nausea set in under her throat. She said a polite goodbye and hurried outside, where she barely made it to the far corner of the house before vomiting into the grass. She felt a little better, but suddenly she felt weak, as if all her strength had gone at once. Lisa was a little frightened and decided not to go home, but first to Kathy. Kathy, maybe I'll get a job, but it's a long shot, she said from the doorstep. Are you so pale? Kathy marveled, barely looking at her face. Oh, I may have poisoned myself. Lisa sighed and told her what had happened to her. Kathy shook her head thoughtfully. I don't want to frighten you, but it's better to check and rule out assumptions. I have a test in my medicine cabinet somewhere. What kind of test? I don't get it, Lisa. Are you 100% sure you can't be pregnant? Then I'm jealous. I'm jealous of Kathy. Do you think we're from the middle of nowhere? Lisa smiled. Of course we are, Kevin. Lisa wasn't used to discussing such things with anyone, so she didn't explain further. Yes, I believe every word you say. Kathy nodded. When people tell me how handsome Robert is, I respond. What do you want? It's electronically verified. We planned for later, 5 years from now, but he had his own way. Here, I found the test, and don't think about all the horrors beforehand. Maybe there's nothing, or maybe there is, but everything will be fine. Why hadn't she thought to ask Kathy how best to break the news? Hinting was stupid. It should be straightforward, only at the right moment, not on the doorstep, but when Kevin had eaten dinner and had had a little rest. Lisa waited until nightfall, and when the lights went out, she said in a half-whisper, Kevin, I'm pregnant. That's for sure. The smell in the barber shop made me sick. Kathy, she gave me a test, and it showed 2 stripes. "Lisa, don't joke about that." Kevin said sweetly. "You know I don't accept such stupid jokes, I'm serious." Kathy told me that they had Robert as well, in spite of the arrangements. It's not that uncommon. No method can be completely 100% trusted. Lisa didn't know what to say next. She fell silent, and silence hung. Only the grandmother clock rustled on the wall. Why is Kevin silent as well? Is he gathering his thoughts? Now he would hug her, say, "Don't worry, Lisa, we'll grow up. You found a problem, I'll fix it." It must have been half an hour before Lisa decided to speak again. "Kevin, I'm scared when you're so quiet. Lisa, I don't want to say it's your fault, so go to the doctor tomorrow and find out how much it costs to get it out quickly. And I'll give you whatever you need from my savings." She heard some completely alien voice. Lisa reached a shivering, suddenly frozen hand over her head, fumbled for the switch on the wall sconce, and turned on the light, as if she wanted to make sure it was her Kevin next to her. It was him, and he shaded the light with his hand. "What else are you going to do to me?" "Lisa, if you're not hysterical, are you going to tell me you want a baby?" "But that's nonsense. Why do we need one, especially now?" Lisa tried to catch his eye, but he averted his gaze with his palm and curved his mouth. She suddenly regained the ability to speak. "I didn't want anyone, because I didn't think about it. I can't abort. If there's already a child, I'll love it. My grandmother told me my father was happy when he found out I was coming, even though he and my mom didn't have anything going on at the time. He just loved her very much, so he loved their baby right away, which was me. Of course, your daddy's the noble knight, and I'm the scoundrel. Did you ever think that he hoped to make peace with his rich wife's family by having a child? No? That's life, baby." Lisa silently slicked her feet into her flip-flops, went into the kitchen and cried, resting her head on the table. Was her daddy counting on something or not? He still couldn't, so to speak. Quick. This, clean it up. She knows for a fact he couldn't have. She carried with her, behind her passport cover, a small photograph of James and Emily squatting, holding the handles on either side of a tiny little girl in a crimson jumpsuit, just now learning to walk. "Daddy, Mommy, there's no one else to support me." Lisa Wells stopped crying. I heard a good-natured voice above me. "Go to sleep tomorrow. If you're afraid, I'll take you to the doctor myself." "Well, I'm sorry about that. Soon you won't even remember about it." "I'm not getting rid of the baby." "Of course you're in favor of creating poverty. I could have guessed that when you were picking up stray cats with kittens, only I'm not a stray." Lisa interrupted him quietly. "Listen, let's get some sleep, calm down, and then we'll talk intelligently in the morning. I'm tired as a dog at work, and here at home Brazilian cereals. I'm gonna go to a friend's house for the night. If you want to talk without drama, call me." Lisa watched in silence as Kevin raked his underwear and clothes off the shelf and threw them into his gym bag without looking. "Don't worry. He'll play the free wolf, cool down and come back and apologize. You main thing at once, do not talk to him, and make first pretend that morally offended and convinced that perfectly well do without him." Lisa reassured and admonished Kathy. "I don't have to pretend. I can get along just fine without him. Even if it's not fine, it's terrible. You'll still have to get by somehow." Gloomily, Lisa assured him. "Why are you so downhearted?" Kathy continued to comfort her, not very confidently. Lisa interrupted her. "I'm sorry, Kathy. You're the best, but don't have any of this. He doesn't need me. I saw that last night. I don't understand why I didn't see it before. Not when I was comfortable needed. Aunt Clara was right. If I didn't have money from my grandmother's rent, he wouldn't have called me here. he'd have left alone. Promised to come back for me and disappeared. He's disappeared anyway. Lisa couldn't take it anymore and burst into tears again. She cried and was angry at herself for crying, for not being able to hold it in. It was as if Kathy had read her mind. That's right. Don't be ashamed of me. Cry as much as you need to. You'll calm down quicker that way. I know what I'm talking about. We fools believe that we are loved, that they will take care of us. Sometimes we are lucky not to be wrong, but often we are not. Kevin didn't come back. Calming down, if you could call it that, her quiet, confused state, Lisa looked around and realized there were no things left in the apartment for him to come back for. All the little things they had managed to buy in the household only mattered to Lisa herself. Kevin had taken his clothes. Where does he live now? With the single Noah he'd made friends with at his new job. He loved the coziness and the lunches Lisa cooked from his grandmother's recipe with imagination. Was he so scared of the baby that he was even willing to sacrifice his comfort? Lisa had endured a whole week and still dialed his number. The subscriber's phone was switched off or out of range. Maybe she should go to his workplace. Kathy reasoned aloud, which conveyed Lisa's confusion. Do you want me to ask Ethan? He won't say no. He's such a chatterbox, it's not hard for him. He'll talk man to man, at least find out how your Kevin's feeling. Like you can't see it already. Lisa looked up at her. She'd lost weight, her face had gotten gaunt in the last week, and her anxious green-brown eyes seemed huge on him. Maybe he's not sure yet. Do you know how cowardly they really are? Uh-huh. Lisa smiled strainedly. I'm all out of money. I've gotten into an untouchable transfer for my grandmother's apartment, which I'm using to pay for this place. If I keep eating this money, I won't be able to pay the landlord here anytime soon, not even next month. And I can't not eat. I'm very hungry for some reason. And Kevin knows my money situation, and he doesn't care. What have you decided about the baby? Kathy asked cautiously. I don't know what I've decided. I could feed myself, but the baby how? What will we live on when he's born and I can't work yet? I have no one, Kathy. I don't even have anyone to come to ask to babysit while I work. And I can't get rid of him. Don't look at me like that. I can't, that's all. I think it would be even worse then than it is now. Kathy walked around the kitchen, looked in the spice jars and said, if your creep doesn't show up, you can always go home. At least there are all those aunts there who were friends with your grandmother will help you with something. But it's a last resort to go back without a dime. Your sentence is still quite short. You could have time to get a job here in Washington. Ideally, officially, of course, maternity leave. Employers don't like it when it's clear. They say you got a job on purpose, but they have their truth, you have yours. You need to live, and they will not take away. But with your profession and no experience, it may not work out that way. So at least you'll have something. I'll always buy you a meal and feed you if you need it. You won't run out. If you don't spend your paycheck, you'll save up some money here and come back to your town with a small reserve for the first time. Or maybe you'll be lucky enough to find something decent. Then you can stay in D.C. as long as you want. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I'd do if I were you. Work first, and then we'll see. Lisa thought that's what she'd do. She just did. Half an hour later, her cell phone rang. It was Nancy from the Orchid. Lisa, hi. Listen, I won't tell you over the phone, but I think there's something for you. Benjamin wants to see you. He said he'd be at the salon by 3 o'clock this afternoon. So you should come too. Do you want your papers? Yeah, I doubt he'll be looking at your papers right away. Well, take a passport just in case, that you are not some Asian citizen, for example. Nancy laughed. I have no idea what he'll think of our unpredictable. Unpredictable. That's not very reassuring, Lisa thought. But you don't have to choose. It's a good thing she's not nauseous today, and she looks pretty good. She washed her hair and makeup, put on the newest of her weekday dresses, and even slipped into her heeled sandals, though she usually ran in more comfortable shoes. By 3 o'clock she was at the salon. The director had to wait another half hour. Lisa was having coffee with Nancy and a customer from the next door, a bright, freshly painted redhead, a cheerful lady. "The bosses aren't late. The bosses are late, girls," announced the lady, wiggling funny. She entertained Lisa and Nancy with funny life stories, and the wait was neither anxious nor boring. But when the principal did arrive, the hilarious customer quickly said goodbye and left. "Nancy, instead of talking, why don't you clean this place up for once? Not your hair, but clean it up properly. I can't believe you don't have time. I can see from the receipts that you do." This he said from the doorstep without anger, with lazy irritation instead of greeting. The director seemed to be a stout, stocky middle-aged man, wearing a brightly colored Hawaiian shirt that was tight around his stomach. "Benjamin," Nancy sang good-naturedly, "have a cheerful outlook on life. Something wrong?" "Yesterday I was Nancy, Smarty Pants. Is this the girl you were telling me about?" Benjamin changed the subject. "Yes, this is Lisa, a certified hairdresser with—" "Hello, please take me on probation." "The girl Lisa, brown-eyed blonde." Benjamin hummed, quite friendly, taking a quick look at Lisa. "But the thing is, I don't need another hairdresser. I'd like to see if she's any better than Jenna. I'm not gonna mess with you. Why did you ask me to come?" Lisa asked, confused. "Nancy praised you so much that I wanted to see if you would be a good fit. I have a restaurant in addition to this place. Now I need another waitress, a pretty and smart one. Urgently, it's summer, the people went. I do not have time to go through the ads and do not really want to waste time. If it suits you, you'll earn money over the summer. Tips are and nothing, as far as I know, and in the fall we'll see. I'm just saying I won't make it official. It's not profitable for me. I do not have such fancy establishments. In the fall, tourists will be less. Maybe half of them will have to be fired. As is usually the case, the work is seasonal. I'm on my way there right now. I can take you with me. You take a look around, see what you like, then we'll talk about shift pay." "Yes, thanks for the offer. Of course I'll go." Lisa agreed right away. There's no point in pretending to be something. She's in the wrong situation. How long will she look for a job in her specialty? What if she's already in a position to be seen? And will she find one at all? You could end up with nothing, and this is a chance. Nancy, behind Benjamin's back, nodded quickly and waved her hand in the affirmative. And before Lisa knew it, she was working at Violet Punch for the 4th week. Yes, that was the taste in names that Benjamin and his companion James had. The Punch was in the same semi-basement as the Orchid, only with a larger space. There was 1 cook and an assistant and 2 waitresses per shift. One of the girls had recently graduated from college and decided to change the job she had held on to while she was a student. Lisa was hired in her place. The restaurant was quite cozy, frequented, inexpensive, and the place was quite busy, and the food was delicious. Another plus at work, of course, was that the food was not the same as that of the clients. It was cheaper and simpler. At first, Lisa was very happy. She wouldn't have to spend money on food on weekdays, saving money again. But more and more often there were days when every trip to the kitchen for an order became a feat for her. The mere smell of food made her sick. Even the most appetizing banquet style, not that of service food. Lisa worked in shifts, 2 days on, 2 days off, 11 o'clock to 11 o'clock p.m., and you'd never guess in the morning. How's the shift gonna go? Will you fly from morning till evening and chew cabbage, carrots, and apples all day, or barely crawl, holding on to the wall and trying not to look at the food, coming to the kitchen for an order? The doctor at the women's clinic where Lisa had registered for temporary registration explained, "She has toxemia. It happens often, but it's nothing to worry about. It should pass soon." I wish it would go away soon. When the cook Charles, Lisa is calmer. He doesn't notice anything. He doesn't understand it, like all guys. He thinks it's just a girl who hasn't slept well. And Molly, the cook, looks suspiciously as if she had guessed it all long ago. Lisa tried not to think about it, remembering Kathy's advice. You need to take care of your nerves now, or you'll be in trouble later with a nervous child. It's just a job. You do it and you go. Who cares what anyone thinks? Kathy used to do that. She recently came back to work from maternity leave, returned to her accounting department, and about the tedious, nagging chief accountant that she told with laughter, without resentment and worry. Maybe it was good that the heat was a rarity in Washington. But one day it got unbearable on the shift. It would soon be over. She ran into the locker room, behind which was the restroom. She opened the door, undid the top 2 buttons of her white work blouse so as not to get it dirty. When I was about to get up and go to the hall, I heard behind me, "Don't make any sudden movements, girl. There are only 2 tables. The second waitress will manage without you. Let me make some tea, it helps. I've got a lot of mint growing in my cottage. I'll give it to you at home if you want it. Ginger tea also helps, and you should eat more often and sleep more. I've had 2, I know." Molly looked at Lisa without mockery, but also without pity, with calm understanding and sympathy. For some reason, Lisa felt not scared, but much better about the fact that she had punctured herself after all. In 10 minutes in the kitchen, while she drank mint tea, she told Molly her whole story. The usual story, she said. "Molly, are you going to take the groceries?" James asked behind her back. "Hello, Molly." In turn, Molly asked, deliberately mocking. Lisa even forgot that she was sick and realized with sober horror that James could have heard their conversation. This companion of Benjamin's, young, thin, and silent, really frightened her for some reason, unpleasant. He always came in unheard, his gait. With the cooks he sometimes says hello, even says something else. But the washers and waitresses are furniture, they never even dignify him with a word. Lisa jumped up at his discovery and happily clung to the elbow of Adriana, who had appeared in the kitchen. "Oh, Adriana, let's go for a second." Come on," said Adriana as soon as they were out the door. "So what? I had tea in the kitchen. There are no people in the hall. Don't be afraid of this, James. Benjamin is in charge, and this one is just pretending." In the evening, Benjamin arrived, in another Hawaiian shirt, and with a particularly heavy odor of booze for Lisa. He called Lisa into the kitchen room, the accountant's office. He examined the girl squeamishly and tiredly handed her an envelope. "This is your salary for the month. Check everything honestly. You don't work anymore." "Why?" Lisa asked with barely moving lips. How insolent modern girls are, especially from the periphery, like you. Why do you think you have the right to lie and set someone up when you've been stupid enough to get pregnant? Something happens to you at work. This is also in some labor inspectorate will go and tell how the bastard director did not register you for work, exploited you, and you will demand maternity money. I won't scold you and scare you, so that you don't faint immediately. I'm just asking you to go quietly and don't try to pull something like that. He was almost friendly, without anger, his voice smooth and lazy. Lisa had a lot of things she wanted to say, but she kept quiet. She wanted to toss him his money, but silently took the envelope. It would come in handy. It wasn't even for her. Let's really take this one somewhere, shall we? Kathy suggested it. Do you want me to report him for poisoning at his diner? Yeah, they'll just fire Molly or Charles. Lisa shook her head. Oh, right, that's out. Oh, we'll get the IRS on him. I'll say 2 times the check was not given at the service or sanitation or the fire department. I mean, what's the number of inspections he's gonna be pissed off about? Kathy, I won't feel better if he feels worse. Well, I would. Kathy confessed honestly. In their own apartment after work will not give rest after work. Kathy's husband, Ethan, muttered to Kathy. All their intrigues. Ethan couldn't tell whether he was joking or serious. The next day, Lisa slept most of the day. She woke up twice, drank strong tea in the kitchen, and went to bed again. She wanted nothing, thought of nothing, as if a dark curtain had fallen over her eyes. In the evening, Kathy rang the doorbell. Come to our place. Oh, come on. Ethan's going to be nagging you about me. He's asking for you. He's got something to say that he didn't get through to me. Kathy announced. Ethan was sitting in the kitchen, finishing his soup from a deep bowl that looked like a basin. Lisa, I found out something for you. Maybe it'll be good for you. My buddy Liam is a decorator. He recently renovated a private house in the suburbs for a grandfather. It's a nice house, but he lives alone. He's taken a liking to Liam. He sees that he is a normal, honest kid and shared that he would rent 1 room to a woman if for ordinary household help, and that she would be his companion, even for free. There are all sorts of errands and talk. That's the deal. A favor for a favor. His living conditions are very good. He doesn't seem to be picky about cleaning, cooking. That's what he said. Maybe he's a freak. Kathy interrupted incredulously. Liam says he's exactly normal. The right grandfather, just alone and with money. He says he will always manage through an agency, but he is not very trustworthy, so he asks all good acquaintances to recommend him. I thought of you right away. Lying again? Lisa asked tiredly. Suddenly, a good man, he expects a quiet old age, and I'm hearing him bang and suddenly give birth. And if I find a job again, how will I have time to do his errands? Then you have to pay for the room like you're supposed to. Look, Lisa, don't confuse me. I'm not Sherlock Holmes, I'm slow. Why don't Liam just tell him honestly that this is your situation? That's probably the right thing to do. Let him decide for himself. Yes, no. Lisa nodded. Even Ethan wanted to help her. She thought he hated her for hanging around their place a lot. That didn't make sense. It wasn't likely to work out, but she should say thank you and pretend to hope. So she did. Ethan headed off to his Liam. Kathy exhaled noisily and offered, Let's have some cherry pie for the night, shall we? If you're really hungry, it's okay for once. Do you think, Kathy, that something good could come out of it? Go and have a look. You've got nothing to lose. Just take a good look at the landlord. He's a tricky old man. Instead of hiring a housekeeper for a salary, he's looking for a girl who'll do the same duties for a room. Don't be shy. Just ask directly what exactly you have to do. Maybe there's plenty of work out there. That it's easier to rent a room for money than to do it all every day. Honestly, I couldn't do it. I sometimes hit my chief accountant with a stapler or a hole punch for her nagging. And there are 1,000,000 reasons for nagging, but it's still worth a look. On his first day off, Ethan took Lisa to meet his grandfather, who rents out his room. According to him, the grandfather was not at all confused by Lisa's story. He didn't even ask anything. Kathy planned to go with her husband and a friend, thinking of a good reason to take a walk with the child in the countryside. But Robert was ill, feverish and cranky, and they had no time for walks. Lisa imagined for some reason a big wooden house in a clearing, like merchants' estates from movies about old life. But the house turned out to be brick, also faced with stone, very stylish and beautiful. It was surrounded by a small garden, a few apple and cherry trees. Without a trace of beds and flower beds, you could see it through the fence. The fence was not a blank brick wall, but a wrought metal one. The graceful gate was open, but Ethan was too shy to enter, so he called on the phone. "Christopher, this is Ethan from Lyon. I've brought the girl Lisa to see your room." "All right, let's go inside, Lisa." While they were walking along the stone-paved path to the house, the front door opened and the owner himself appeared on the threshold, holding a large and very shaggy white dog by the collar. From under his bangs, scrutinizing Lisa and Ethan. "This is Olaf. He's as peaceful as a poof if you don't attack him and me. So don't be afraid of him for a minute if you're not going to attack him. And I, Christopher?" To realize that the owner was already well over 70, you had to look carefully at his face, covered with a network of wrinkles, where deep and sharp, where thinner and smaller. His gaze was quick and sharp, not senile, but it was softened by the rays of wrinkles near his eyes. Not angry. Lisa exhaled quietly, and if you didn't look at his face, you wouldn't think he was an old man. His posture was that of a middle-aged man, his lean and wiry figure without a hint of decrepitude. Completely gray silver hair was cut very short, and a neat beard, as Christopher invited them into the house. So respectable on the outside, the house appeared cozy, but a little unusual on the inside. Of course, it was obvious by many signs that a woman's hand had not been here for a long time, although the owner obviously keeps order. But the main thing was that it was as if several different times had gathered in the house. So different was the furniture, even the bedspread and curtains. In the spacious hallway on the first floor, it was XX century, and in the living room, it was like the 19th. It was clear even to Lisa, who didn't understand antiques, that the furniture was vintage. She snapped to attention. It was probably rude to look at everything so closely. Ethan, at his host's suggestion, sat down on the edge of the guest sofa and demurely kept quiet. "Do you want to see your room right away, Lisa?" Christopher asked. "Have you already decided that I'm the right person for you?" Lisa was surprised and confused. "Have you already decided that I'm not the right person for you?" The owner laughed. "Don't be so quick to judge. Let's see the room. It is here on the first floor. I'm on the second floor. There's a study and a bedroom. The rest of the space is abandoned. It's just a bunch of old archives. I'm sorting through it, but I don't feel like it. If you'd like to keep me company, I'd really appreciate it. Of course, if you're interested." Christopher opened the light beige silent door. "This is the room. Come in, Lisa." The square room, overlooking a cozy corner of the garden, seemed very warm and cozy. There was only an old chest of drawers, a small table with a mirror and a bed. "We'll find a closet for outfits," assured the owner. "If you don't like the curtains, change them. The main thing is not to tear down the load-bearing walls, and the rest is negotiable and solvable." Lisa remembered Kathy's instructions. "Christopher, I like the room. I just need you to tell me all your conditions at once in detail. You told Lyon that you're renting out the place for household help, and I want to know what my duties will be. I'm conscientious. But you know I have some difficulties. What a businesslike girl you are." The owner smiled. "Your difficulties, as you put it, do not interfere." Maybe it will sound strange what I will tell you, but try to understand. I know you have no one. I don't have anyone either. I could hire a pro housekeeper, and I have, but I don't want to anymore. It's uncomfortable having someone else's professional servant in the house. I don't have a need for the house to be perfectly cleaned like a magazine, and I need to be served like a luxury hotel. I need a live person in the house badly. I like you, and I don't like all people. And household chores without fanaticism, all the same things you would do if I were your dad or grandfather, living under the same roof with you. Little by little according to mood, so that you do not doubt, this is not charity. This kind of work is worth about the price of a house. If you help me with the archive, that would be the most wonderful thing. I'll pay you as a secretary for that. Lisa had imagined the conversation with the owner of the house differently, and she had imagined him differently while she was on her way here. It seemed suspicious that everything was going so well. Well, she'll find out the pitfalls later. Christopher, when can we move in? If your friend Ethan is willing to drive up and down to get your stuff, you can move in today. I'll give you money to stop by, buy us dinner, celebrate the housewarming. Yeah, I'll make dinner. Lisa promised. Let's go ask Ethan. It turns out that archives are not dusty and boring documents, but a very interesting thing. It's like reading a screenplay, only it was all real. Especially the diaries, they're alive. Something like the magicians of books, when there were no computers, and even typewriter was far from everyone and only at work. People just wrote down their thoughts, with a pen on paper, and even earlier, with a fountain pen in ordinary school notebooks, or beautiful, thick, swollen, from the lives they contained. And people had enough time for that, despite the fact that there were almost no household appliances, and life itself wasn't any easier. As Christopher said, life has simplified and lost a lot. No, there are a lot of good things now, but the old good things had better stay. It was very interesting with him in general. Kathy was worried that Lisa was bored on the outskirts of town with her old grandfather, and called her to come and visit them more often on weekends. Lisa was happy to come, went for a couple of walks with Kathy and Robert around Washington, D.C., and then was just as happy to come back. "Oh, come on, my bunnies, I've got to go home," she said last Saturday, and surprised herself. At the same time as Kathy, she already thought of this house and the room in it as her real home, the one she'd lived in for a long time. And her grandmother's clock seemed to have always hung on the wall opposite her bed, where Christopher had hung it. "Not picking on you, Grandpa?" Kathy asked. "Well, about the variety of the menu, or that you put things in the wrong place when cleaning, that you're not neat enough or lazy? I mean, what kind of grudges can grandfathers have? Probably like my Ethan, only twice as much because of his age. To be honest, it's hard for me to even imagine Christopher as a fastidious old man." Lisa laughed. "It turns out that I don't do anything heavy at all, just basic things, the same things I did when I lived with my grandmother. Dinner, simple cleaning, and Christopher takes away my cleaning supplies if he thinks I should be tired by now. And he's always spoiling me with all kinds of good food. He says he bought it for himself, but he barely touches it. Kathy, he's not a typical grandfather. There was this story. There was a regular old professor, Professor Emeritus. He was inventing innovations for American industry and the military, and he had two favorite students. Both of them had been working with him for years, and then he started some big project, and he was really hoping to move it forward. One of his pupils worked with him on the technical part, and the other one was more forceful and dodgy, running through all kinds of instances. He was trying to get funding or some permits. For me, these technical scientific works are just a dark forest. I've only realized one thing about them. They are very long, and the result is not always what you expect. And while these companions were working, the funding ran out. Soon there will be nothing to eat. It is unclear who will pay for the work at all. Already at least from the house all the valuable things in the pawn shop. And when everything was ready, one of the companion students disappeared. The one with the punching bag. Kathy guessed, took all the designs with him and took off. That's what it was all about. That's what it was. He went to the north, patented an invention there, provided for himself and his children for life. And these two honest martyrs of science, the professor almost had a stroke. He was ill for a long time, barely survived, and when he got back on his feet, his wife also took him to the north, persuaded him. She had a close relative living there, married very well, and the second student stayed here in Washington. At first he thought he'd get drunk, but then somehow it all worked out. Talent, it finds a loophole. He met the right man, a very smart man. He started working for this man. He worked out a whole production for him and made good money back in the 90s. And then he got an inheritance from the north. It turns out that his favorite friend professor still managed to work there, but for himself, and the professor had no children. So he wrote a will, half of his property to his wife, half to his student and colleague, where I live. This old archive that we're going through now, it's the professor's. Christopher carried it everywhere with him, since it was left to him. The professor and his wife left their antique furniture to him before they left. They could have sold it. It is not cheap, but the professor wanted at least something valuable in memory of himself, the student to leave. He felt he'd let him down with his earnings and recognition. So when Christopher bought the house, he moved everything in. So now he lives surrounded by these memories. He wants to sort through the archive and publish some of his favorites, as if he owes it to his teacher to have someone here to remember him. What a life people have lived. Kathy shook her head. Even intelligence isn't a guarantee that you'll live a problem-free life. Listen, why is he alone, your Christopher? If around such a wealthy grandfather there are no heirs, then, and really, there is no one. There's something wrong with him if no auntie's got her hands on him. Kathy, he doesn't mention that at all, and I don't ask. Maybe if he asked me something personal, I'd ask him. He doesn't ask me either. I think he's embarrassed. He's so well-bred that he doesn't pry into other people's business. Yes, intellectuals are complicated. Kathy confirmed, with a knowing look, as if she talks to professors every day. Maybe, on the contrary, it's easier to live like that if you follow all these rules. I won't make any predictions, so as not to jinx it, but so far, you seem to be having a good time. You've even gotten prettier. Even though you're digging through dusty archives. Yeah, I looked like a skinned otter when I moved in. Lisa agreed. Look, I'm not being intellectual, I'll ask you. Has Kevin showed up yet? Kathy, I'd be the first to tell you. You, Ethan, and Christopher are the only people I have in Washington. Christopher rarely forgets anything, and now he volunteered to help Lisa peel apples for jam. And it turns out he forgot his glasses in the office. Probably left them on the desk, on the keyboard of his laptop. I'll be right there. Let me run. I want to run up the stairs. Lisa had only been in the office a few times. It was Christopher's diocese, as he put it. He tidied it himself, leaving it a comfortable mess, not without logic. Occasionally he'd do a little rearrangement, swapping books on the shelves or some figurines from the table to the shelf and back again. Now on his antique desk next to his laptop, besides his glasses, there was a chessboard with bone chess and a small photograph in a thin wooden frame. Lisa hadn't noticed any pictures in the study before, at least not in prominent places. In the black and white amateur photo, a little girl with 2 ponytails on top of her head, lying on the sand in a swath of sea surf, laughing and hugging a large striped bouncy ball. Lisa remembers every detail of this photo very well. She has the same one in her backpack, in the same folder with her passport, diploma, and several expensive photos. Christopher, the photo of the girl at sea. Where did you get it? Lisa asked, forgetting her shyness as soon as she went down to the kitchen and handed the owner of the house her glasses. I took this photo. I was into photography, Christopher replied. He looked anxiously at Lisa's face and listened to her strange mood. This is my daughter, Emily. I carry the same picture with me, and it came here with me. That's my mom, Emily, but she's not your daughter. A good memory is not always a blessing. It's sometimes a curse. The beautiful Vanessa, whom he had adored until their last day together, as he had on their wedding day, stood before him a complete stranger. She had become even more beautiful in the week that Christopher had not seen her, but somehow different. A well-groomed, magazine beauty that could not be touched without danger. It suited her very well, and that gold, and that fur coat in which the man she had gone to had dressed her. And she said terrible things in her perfectly calm, quiet, and gentle voice. I don't want the child to flit back and forth. She's still young. It will be easier for her to forget you and get used to a new father. Especially since Michael takes good care of her and wants her to call him Daddy. She'll have everything you could never give her. You know you can't give her anything except your love, which is nothing but words. This is a different life than the one your parents raised you for. She pestered me about you first, and to stop her asking for you, I told her you had another family and another daughter. You chose them. You know how much Emily loves me, and yet you decided to pull such a sneaky trick to make a child feel betrayed by her own father. Because of your harebrained fear that someday she'll find out the truth that you left me. She's past that. Kids forget things quickly, and when she's an adult, if she finds out, she'll understand me as a woman. And if you show up now, it'll only make her feel worse. Yeah, you've gotten to know me pretty well. I'm not gonna tell my daughter that her mother easily talked back to her father. At least let her mom be good to her. Thank you. Chuckles. I knew you'd understand. Christopher, I'm not filing for child support. I know how hard this must be for you. Thank you, Honorable. He grinned through his teeth, turned and walked away. I didn't know where, but away. He didn't recognize anything else and never looked for anyone. He himself could not answer who was more protected, his daughter or himself. And he made a terrible mistake. Had he found his daughter in time, there would have been someone to support her when her mother turned away from her because his Emily had chosen an unfavorable husband. And Lisa's granddaughter, there'd be someone to support her and her stepfather's mother. Maybe still alive would be the only real Lisa grandmother, if her heart, to pay for serious treatment. But history does not bear the subjunctive mood, as his teacher and colleague said. Now it is necessary to live on and live a long time, because soon there will be another tenant in the house who will have to be taken care of for a long time until he can take care of himself. And it's easy and pleasant to live a long time when you have someone to take care of you. Kathy's voice sounded kind of strained, and she didn't call in the evening, as usual, but on her lunch hour. Lisa, would you mind if I came straight over after work today? Nothing's wrong, everything's fine. I'm just in the mood to see you and chat. There's some little things I need to tell you. Yes, come over, of course. Especially since Grandpa's going to a class reunion at his institute and he's worried about us being alone for so long. What if we need something in his absence and he's not here? I'll at least reassure him that we won't miss him. Oh, good, considering all the traffic. I'll be at your place by 8 o'clock. Kathy promised. Lisa steamed Grandpa's weekend suit, the color of wet asphalt, and tied his tie. She approved of his gentlemanly appearance and walked into the meeting. He waved a long time after the cab. Back in the house, she dressed Emily and went out into the garden with her. In its far sunny corner under an apple tree, unnoticeable from the road, they had a real nest set up. Grandpa had hung a baby hammock cocoon there for Emily. It seemed to Lisa that her daughter loved to lie there and watch the sun bunnies playing in the apple leaves. She would hum softly in her own language and then fall asleep and sleep soundly, no matter what sounds came from the road. And the clever dog Olaf, who knew not to bark now, sat nearby and just breathed noisily. There was also a small, elegant garden table and 2 armchairs at arm's length from the hammock. Grandpa and Lisa had been dining there for a month, since the middle of May, rocking and listening to her humming. She's going to have a beautiful voice. Grandpa laughed in a whisper, raising his index finger to the sky. And not for nothing did she go to the opera. When October rolled around, the city and nature became somehow especially dreary without coziness. Christopher came up with an entertainment for Lisa. What kind of theaters did she like? Lisa didn't know which ones she liked, or whether she liked them at all. I've never been to one yet. Without shyness, she confessed. In our town, there was nothing but the House of Culture, and here I didn't have time. We sometimes brought some performances, but I was never particularly interested in it. I see. What would be interesting? Grandpa kept up. I love music, Lisa confessed. Not electronic music for disco, but beautiful music, which is good for thinking or remembering something. And Grandpa took a season ticket to the musical theater, and he so mesmerized Lisa that she felt the baby moving there for the first time. The ultrasound showed it was going to be a girl. Lisa knew for sure. A girl listening to music with her, swooning during opera arias and dancing at operettas. Can you tell I'm making this up? But Emily liked the Queen of Spades the best. Lisa shared with Grandpa one day. He looked at her strangely and was silent for 5 minutes, like a deaf mute, as if he was talking to himself, but couldn't say it out loud. He just glared. Lisa realized only then. She didn't tell them how she had decided to call her girl at once, as she already called her. Emily was born in February, on a windy, blizzardy night. With balloons and flowers, they were greeted from the house by the 3 of them, Grandpa and Kathy with Ethan. Ethan drove them home, and just as the friends were leaving after a small buffet, Grandpa Christopher sat down across from Lisa and asked, "Why don't you tell your father, Emily, that she was born? What do you think? Grandpa, you haven't asked anything about him in so long. I thought you'd never ask. You don't want to know anything about him. I just saw that you didn't want to talk about him. And now it's a day like this. Maybe you'll see things differently. The trouble with people like you is that you judge others by yourself." Lisa objected. "In some ways you're right. But don't forget that I'm old. I've learned a few things, and I've gotten rid of my naivete. Just bring me up to speed, at least briefly, while our girl is asleep." And Lisa did. To her immense surprise, it was not at all hard for her to tell her grandfather about Kevin and how easily he had left her. It was like retelling a movie or a novel. It didn't have the slightest relevance to her anymore. She has a different life with other people in charge. Grandpa agreed with Lisa. Everyone who should know about Emily's birth had already been notified. It turned out that it only seemed to Lisa that the recent past had evaporated completely. Kathy tipped it over, looked at a lump at the sleeping Emily and said, sitting down on the edge of the chair, "Lisa, you'll just have to forgive me. I beg you in advance. I'm a fool, I admit it. Don't scare me with your preambles, Lisa warned me. She had almost no doubts about what she was going to talk about. We had a big corporate retreat at work. 20th anniversary of the company. A campground, a barbecue. Toward the end of the evening, we hit the bumps to talk. Well, we have a purely female company gathered on the open veranda, all ages from 30 to 55. And there was the usual conversation about how hard it is to raise a child alone, that say, it is better not to decide on it at all. It's always poverty problems. And somehow everyone fell into such pessimism, strange for a corporate party, that I wanted to tell something good, saying that it's not always so bad. So I told your story, how you found your grandfather. I didn't even say your name, but I told them you were my friend. The girls were surprised, happy for you and your daughter, cheerful. It would seem that was the end of it, but it wasn't. A day later, on Sunday, the doorbell rings. There's your ex on the doorstep, looking for you. I let him in, of course, because I'm not rude. Actually, I was just confused by the surprise and forgot that I should have turned on boorish. I said, "This is a phenomenon." And then he started to me obviously according to the prepared scenario. Apparently, he realizes that I consider him a scoundrel, and he completely agrees he is a scoundrel, but only realized everything, and so on in the same style. Probably watched a couple shows as a guide. I'm sitting there nodding, pretending to be touched by his remorse. He sings to me that he would have apologized to you a long time ago if you hadn't changed your phone number and place of residence. He lost track of you, you see, and he's just now decided to ask me. He was so ashamed to show up. I was too lazy to even ask him tricky questions. I was so disgusted. They're taking me for a fool. No, I don't claim to be a smart woman, but not to that extent. How do I get away from him? I don't know. It's a shame Ethan was out fishing with Liam. That would have been easier. Kevin started begging me, give me an address, at least give me a phone number. So I said, I have my own life and my own business. I don't have time to deal with other people's. We haven't talked for a long time since we separated. We were just roommates. Maybe Lisa went home. Why don't you go to your town if you have to? And he didn't believe me for a second. Here we go. Don't lie to me, Kathy. I didn't do anything to hurt you. He's angry and about to threaten me, even though it's not good for him. I was lucky there was no bite, and Ethan got home early. So Ethan kicked him out. Talked to him in the street. Kathy paused for a big sip of frozen coffee, patted Olaf's withers, and without waiting for Lisa to comment, continued. I'm just convinced, I was convinced from the beginning, that his appearance had something to do with me talking about you at the corporate party. He found out that you had a good life and decided to try his luck and get a big piece of it. It just seems like a big city. In such cases, you realize how small it is. Someone always sees something, hears something, and passes it on to someone else. And I'm an accountant. I'm next to the HR department. I am friends with our personnel officer, told the situation, and asked to look in case in the questionnaires, were the husbands of those girls who sat with us in the company and listened to my story. Went in, looked it up for a short time. Only 7 girls turned out to be married, and the hunch didn't fool me. Evelyn from sales has her husband's place of employment on her profile, a luxury car service, just like your Kevin. You said the name, and I remember things like that. Here's the most likely Kevin is a buddy, Evelyn's husband, and she told the story in front of him from the corporate party. And this goose, of course, recognized himself and you. It's too much of a match. Didn't I mention you were recently my roommate? Lisa, I'm sorry, and be aware that he might show up. Kathy, you're so full of it. Lisa smiled, trying to smile as serenely as possible. You've made such a detective out of nothing. You've even looked into the personnel files. It wasn't your fault. You couldn't have foreseen anything. It was just a story to get you in the mood. I've always loved hearing other girls' interesting stories, too. I didn't even think there could be anything wrong with it, as long as you don't gossip or say mean things behind their backs, but just talk about the person. Thank you for not being mad at me. I'd understand if you were mad at me. Are you going to do something about it? What do you mean? Lisa didn't understand. Shove the baby in a suitcase and run off somewhere? No one came to see me. Even if Kevin somehow finds out where I live, it's not like he's going to come here. If you didn't tell him it's just the three of us, maybe he's picturing a mansion with columns, an alarm system, a panic button, and a couple of grim bodyguards. Yeah, I didn't mention that. Kathy exhaled with a sigh of relief. Oh, I even said that you have a gorgeous dog, a South Russian sheepdog. By the way, this breed is considered unpredictable and aggressive. Sorry, Olaf. By the way, you do have an alarm system, don't you? Grandpa returned home, lively, satisfied with the meeting with old friends, joked, retold stories of classmates, sent greetings from them, granddaughter and great-granddaughter. And he announced that he missed her. Lisa did not bother to tell him about the incident that had happened to Kathy. It wasn't right if he was only going to take care of her and her. He had to be taken care of too. And there's no one else to do that but her. Sure, she was scared at the first moment, but just a little bit, and at the very first moment. Kevin is not a villain or a criminal mastermind, but a very ordinary, selfish guy. There's nothing to fear at all. She'll figure something out if he shows up. A month later, Lisa had almost forgotten Kathy's warning. She had no time to think about unpleasant things. Her daughter was growing up. She was already sitting up in her crib, in her stroller, trying to sit up even in the soft hammock cocoon. When she saw Olaf, she was happy and stretched her arms to him, trying to run them into his shaggy fur. Don't worry, Grandpa reassured her. Olaf understands perfectly well that it's a puppy. Kathy came almost every weekend with Robert, sometimes with Ethan as well. But Lisa also wanted to go to Washington all of a sudden. Grandpa was supportive. I'm surprised you haven't gotten bored yet. At your age, solitude is usually hard to bear. The baby's over 6 months old. It's time for you to get out into the world. Go out with Kathy at least. Just have a carefree summer cafe. Do moms need a vacation too? Why don't you pump your milk, and I'll feed Emily without you? Grandpa, I'm amazed at your expertise in so many areas. What did you think? I read literature about children and control quietly the process of cultivation and upbringing. Grandpa grinned, and Lisa went to Kathy's. They didn't sit in an outdoor cafe, but walked around the zoo with Robert, but they still had a great time. They said they were going to come here with Emily very soon to show her the bigger animals than Olaf. She'd definitely be interested. They talked about when Emily gets a little older. Lisa will open a little beauty parlor. Grandpa wants to help her start a business that she enjoys, and it would just be great if Kathy would agree to do the bookkeeping. We did 3 laps around the zoo. Robert didn't want to leave. When they managed to get him out, they bought ice cream and sat down with him on a park bench. Lisa took a bite of the ice cream with pleasure and heard a half-forgotten familiar voice from the side. Lisa. She flinched. It seemed to her that Kathy did too. Robert was running around the flower bed, eating his ice cream on the run. Kevin stepped out of the mottled shade of a tree and stood in front of them. Lisa, hello. Lisa, we have to go, said Kathy. We're running late. Let's go. Kathy, wait for me literally just a little bit. Lisa heard her own carefree voice. I'm interested. It won't take long. I'm listening." The last kindly indifferent words were intended for Kevin. "Where is our daughter?" he asked, making a worried face. "We don't have anything of ours." Peacefully, Lisa explained. "Lisa, forgive me if you can. I need you and the daughter. It just took me a long time to realize it. I'll do anything for you if you'll let me try to start over. Kathy told you I was looking for you." Kathy stood back by the flower bed and listened, not even pulling away, Robert bouncing around her. Lisa gave a slightly derisive grin. Very, very theatrical. "I have nothing to forgive you for." It was, and it came up. So it had to be. "Thanks for the daughter. She's beautiful." "What have you become?" Kevin said in a muffled voice, reproachful and admiring at the same time. "You look like Hollywood. Anything else? It's really time for us to go. I don't hold it against you, Kevin. And I'm not filing for alimony. Don't worry. You'll still have all your savings. Lisa, don't do this to me. You couldn't have gotten over it so fast. I know you. It wouldn't be you. People don't change that fast, and we have a daughter, and you won't even let me look at her? I know you found your grandfather, but that's not the father. I'm not giving up until you give me a chance. Now he's going to play the macho man who decided to fight for his love." Lisa rose from the bench, walked slowly around Kevin, lightly stroked his shoulder, and made sure he took it as a good sign, and said in the same nonchalantly peaceful and calm voice, "People change, and they change fast when circumstances force them to. I know you're aware of my financial changes, so you're under no illusions, but I'm glad I wasn't married to you by the time I found my grandfather. You can find a much better option with an inheritance, even with a child. One more piece of advice. If you're looking for me or my daughter, let me know in any way. You know who made what and how they made money in the 90s, who they socialized with, right? My grandfather's acquaintance, and now I have a corresponding one. My grandfather owes a lot to the reputable Mr. William. If that name tells you anything, such men do not forfeit their protection without cause. You can always turn to them to get rid of unwanted interference. Like you, Kevin, it's nothing personal. Consider it a sign of forgiveness. Bitch." Kevin exhaled angrily into her ear and turned and walked across the lawn toward the zoo. Now he's going to disappear from the horizon. Kathy spoke up. "Hey, I wasn't expecting you. You've really changed, haven't you? I felt like I wasn't alone in the world, so I changed. I can see that. Lisa, who's William? You never told me about him. Is he the guy your grandfather invented the production lines for? I don't even know his last name. Kevin will do. I just thought of him." Passers-by turned around. Some irritated, but most smiled. How cheerful, infectious the laughs of those young, beautiful girls, and the little boy, covered to the ears in ice cream, running around them so contentedly. Ethan came to pick them up, as arranged. "Oh, I barely made it through the traffic." He exhaled. Imagine some uncle jumped up to me and Liam while we were fishing and started to claim with arrogance that we occupied his permanent place. There's his chair, there's his flat tire. There's his rotten fishing rod stands made of driftwood. That's a first in my life. And you know me, Kathy, if he'd asked nicely, we'd have left. And after he was so rude, I told him, "Listen, when you save up, buy this place from the city, fence it in, it'll be yours. In the meantime, behave yourself with decent people, you'll be better off." "You're just like William, my love," said Kathy. "Have you met anyone I don't know?" "It's not mine, it's Lisa's." Ethan replied that they shouldn't be laughing. There was nothing to laugh about. He would bring Lisa home and tell her grandfather that she had some strange acquaintances, ostentatious macho men about whom nothing was known in the house. You have to be serious and think more about the kids.